Introducing health and wellness advocate, veteran international real estate investment expert, author and speaker, Adiel Gorel.
Health tips, fitness tips, nutrition and well-being, world-class experts, all right here on my podcast, The Adiel Gorel Show. I will interview a great voice coach out of Los Angeles by the name of Roger Love, who also works with the greatest singers and speakers. I work with him. He's a good friend now. And he talks about when you sing or speak, you should always breathe through your nose. The reason he says it is because otherwise your vocal cords get dry. Simple, it's a simple thing. But right away, here is the nose breathing from a totally different angle. Breathe through the nose. He also claims that he has seen studies that people who sing live longer. And I understand why. It's the humming, it's all of that.
Yeah, you will save 40% more moisture breathing through your nose. That is an incredible amount. So when you see people out jogging and they have those little belts with all those water bottles on it, you don't need that stuff if you are breathing through your nose, especially during sleep as well. So it makes perfect sense while speaking, while singing, to be nasal breathing as much as you possibly can. You know, people think since I wrote this book, I'm a researcher, journalist writing about breathing, that I'm the best breather in the world. But I'm not. For the past 3 months, I've been on all these interviews, and when you're talking right there, I'm taking mouth breaths, and I think it's one of the reasons at the end of the day I'm so tired. If I was able to focus more on breathing through my nose, I think that there would be a lot of benefits, and especially for singers. If you're singing a lot and you're constantly you can just feel, just doing that a few breaths, you can feel how dry that is. And then your body has to compensate and try to keep all these tissues moist again. So why make your body constantly trying to compensate? Let it be able to do its job more easily, and then it has more energy to heal and repair itself.
So, I have a mountain right next to my home that I hike usually, but now I can't with this air. So I noticed how hard it is. I was with a friend and said, let's just climb the entire mountain. It's a steep, very steep hike, only with nose breathing. My friend became impatient and forged ahead. I said, no, I'm just going to. So, the nose breathing determined my pace. I couldn't go crazy because then so I let the nose breathe. That's a way of training, I guess. You go as far as you can breathe through your nose, and then you get better, right?
So what I have been told by numerous breathing experts, these are people who work with Olympians, ultramarathoners, MMA fighters, boxers, the top people. They say you only work out as hard as you can breathe correctly. And if you reach a limit where you're breathing just, you need to slow down and build that base and slowly work back up. The thing is, as Westerners, we're impatient. We're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead. If you want to really win the race in a few months and condition yourself properly so that you'll be able to hike up that hill 10 years from now and 20 years from now, you need to build that base in the right way. I was just talking to Dr. John Douillard, who I cite in the book, one of the top trainers. And he said with some of his athletes, he helped train Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova and NBA stars. And I mean, you name it. He said that it can take a couple months for us really to acclimate our noses to higher levels of endurance. But once you get there, you're getting 20% more oxygen. You're able to do more at a lower heart rate, which means you're able to go further and faster using less energy, which means you can use that extra energy to beat your component, your opponent. So I think that's really the key is, don't rush into this stuff. Don't say, I'm going to breathe, 6 times a minute for the next 12 hours. I'm just going to really go for it. Let your body adjust. If you were sitting on a couch for 10 years, you won't go and run a marathon. You're going to mess your body up. And the respiratory system, a lot of these tissues, the structures are delicate. slowly go into this and you will see some profound benefits. And that's certainly what I've seen from so many people over the last several years.
So, I mean, I guess if you kiss, you must breathe through your nose. That's a good place.
There you go.
So, I was really kind of taken by what you said in the chapter about chewing. For me, that was novel. I mean, I was, whoa, it completely resonated with it. So that we don't chew the way we used to chew. You went there and stepped inside of skull dust under the ground. I loved all of that. So do you still, well, you said you even used a device and you saw the result, but do you chew gum more, sugarless kind, tough gum, you even say which gum, do you do it, quite a bit now?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why so many of us have breathing problems is because humans as a species, our mouths have grown too small. And if you don't believe me, just look at ancient skulls. You're going to see these huge jaws, forward growing faces, perfectly straight teeth. So the researchers that I was working with, they said they had never seen a hunter-gatherer with crooked teeth, ever. Thousands of skulls. Look around today, see how many people have crooked teeth. I'm a great example at crooked teeth, extractions, braces, all that garbage. So many of these problems came about because as a species, we stopped chewing a few hundred years ago. Think about even the food you've eaten today, avocados, pancakes, yogurt, smoothies, all this stuff is soft. So our ancestors chewed for about 4 hours a day. It's how they were able to develop these very powerful skulls, straight teeth. So having a mouth that's too small for its face means you also have a smaller airway, which makes it harder to breathe, which is one of the reasons so many of us have so many chronic breathing problems. So chewing is especially important in infancy, and I associate breastfeeding with chewing. That is a form of chewing stress. When you're a young kid, eating real foods. In adulthood, when you're middle-aged like me, it's harder because everything's already set, but you can still make some real progress. So I was told, I was warned by a dentist, you can't put out this advice carte blanche because some people have TMJ problems. And if they just go into chewing 3 hours a day, they're going to cause more problems. So if you don't have TMJ problems and the rest of your structure here is good, chewing has massive benefits, not only to help tone your airway, to make it easier to breathe. It increases, just talking to a researcher yesterday, increases blood flow, puts you in a relaxed state. You can only digest when you're salivating. You only salivate when you're relaxed. So there's so many benefits to it, and so few of us chew anymore. So to answer your question specifically, yes, I chew this crazy, the hardest gum I could find, this Turkish gum, sugar-free. It tastes like shoe leather, but man, does it give you a workout. And I don't think it's a coincidence that stuff's been sold out on Amazon the last couple months, and so many people are riding me chewing Phileme.
I bought so much, so yeah. Thank you for that, by the way. When I was reading it, in an instinctive way, I almost felt like I wanted to go like this. Just for just a second, to get my jaw a little more. Of course, it's not going to make a difference because it's only 1 second. But I have a question for you. There are people who say that the concept of oil pulling is beneficial. Many dentists say, well, oil pulling, it's about you use, the coconut oil, let's say, swirl it in your mouth for like 20 minutes. And it made sense. I read it. We're not going to go into it now. But when I was doing it, my musculature here got pretty tired because I wasn't used to it. I ate avocados. Sounds like that could have a double benefit. It would be the oil pulling effect, whatever that does, if it does anything. But also gives you this kind of workout.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that. I've heard about it, but I don't feel comfortable speaking to it. I know the premise of that. It's an old Ayurvedic method that they believe it helps leach out some toxins from your mouth. Makes sense to me. It'd be interesting to see some studies on it. But if it's causing you to work out these muscles here, I can only imagine that will be beneficial. We know that oropharyngeal exercises, the tongue is this very powerful muscle, right? And so by pushing it up to the roof of your mouth and doing different exercises, they've shown enormous benefits for people with snoring and sleep apnea, because so many of those problems are associated with this gets flabby. We've got this muscle tube, it's the throat, it gets flabby, which causes snoring, you know, and sleep apnea is caused by the tongue rocking back into the mouth. But if you work out that tongue, if you start toning it, it can more gently sit on the roof of your mouth, which is what you want. Right now, if you were to open your mouth up just a little bit, you're going to feel your tongue rock back into your airway. It's going to close that airway. And if you close your mouth, you're going to feel that tongue rock up to the upper palate to open the airway. So these exercises, they've been studied pretty extensively, and I was amazed by, 20 to up to 60% improvement after a couple of weeks by just exercising your tongue. And it's free, everyone. So what reason would you have not to do it?
Where can we find them?
Oh, they're available online. You can just research oropharyngeal exercises. There was recently, I think it was a couple years ago, but it was released in the journal Chest, which is a top scientific journal. So this isn't coming from some woo-woo new age stuff. These are real researchers who have calculated the difference that just exercising the tongue can make. And to me, it's obvious. It's like the tongue is a muscle. If that muscle isn't used when you're just eating soft food and drinking Go-Gurt or whatever, it's going to get out of shape. But starting to tone it up is going to allow it to work more properly.
I want to thank you for putting yourself with your friend, the Nordic friend, through that study at Stanford. You made yourself, a lab, a guinea pig. And it was excruciating to read about that first week.
Yeah, it was pretty excruciating to be in that study, but no one else was going to do it. And, I made this very clear to this is, again, Dr. Jack Nayak down at Stanford, numerous conversations with him. Stanford, I live in San Francisco, so I was down there all the time at their medical library, which was just incredible, finding stuff. And, he was telling me about all the damage caused by mouth breathing. He sees patients every day. He's one of the top guys in the world. And I said, yeah, but how soon does that damage come on? Is it after a couple of years? Is it after a couple of decades? He said, I don't know. There's never been an experiment done. So that's how it came about. And a lot of people were thinking, my friends were like, oh, this is like a jackass, supersize me experiment. It's really not. When you look at 25 to 50% of the population, that, we were lulling ourselves into a position people already knew the differences. We were calculating it. And so we knew it wasn't going to be pleasant, but that first night, this is when I got really scared. The first night, my snoring increased 1,300%. So I went from snoring 3 minutes to snoring an hour and a half. Within 4 days, I was snoring 4 hours, and I had sleep apnea. I was choking on myself. So, and the day that I don't want to give anything away from the book, but the day we removed the plugs and we weren't mouth breathing anymore. So the study was 10 days mouth breathing, 10 days nasal breathing. It all went away instantly. And I just don't see too many people talking about, especially people with mild or moderate sleep apnea or snoring, talking about the pathway through which you breathe having such a huge influence on those conditions. One good thing from the book is through sleep taping. I've received probably 80 to 100 emails of people saying, I've had mild to moderate snoring, even mild to moderate sleep apnea. They've gone to 3 or 4 sleep studies. They've used every imaginable drug. They've done it all. One guy just wrote last night, said he was a doctor, within one single night of taping his mouth shut and breathing through his nose, he no longer snores. So again, this is free stuff. It's available to everyone. And to me, that's the biggest compliment, to affect someone like that with something that anyone can do at any time, and just watching your body heal itself through breathing.
Is there any reason why when somebody does this taping at night, which I do, by the way, not to use the breathe right strip on your nose because it's going to give you a little extra? Is there any reason not to do that?
I think with people with a lot of congestion who are new to this, who have trouble breathing through their nose, breathe right strips are fantastic. There's also a strip called, I forget the name of it, Muse, but you actually insert it into your nose and it opens up your nostrils. So right now people can take your two fingers, this is called the Cottle's maneuver, and you can take it and spread open your nostrils like this. And if you can breathe a lot better, that means that your nostrils are either too closed or the nostril tissue may be too flappy, which is actually pretty common. People breathe in, their nostrils go in. So those strips are fantastic, especially to get people over that first hump. And I would highly suggest people trying those out. Other sprays can work too. I've tried Breathe Right. I loved them. I didn't really need them after about a week. And I found that while jogging or doing really intense exercise, when you're first switching to nasal breathing, those can really help.
Yeah, so mountain, I don't tape because there are other people, although I thought I could say, oh, it's a mini mask. This is my mini mask here. but I do put this strip. So I hold my mouth closed when I hike. But I do use that which seems like you do when you do sports. So I was wondering, you described, the Wim Hof method. And of course I was at his work. He had a workshop in San Francisco, a couple of years ago. I was there. And the Wim Hof breathing is invigorating.
Yeah.
But in the context of the whole, it's over breathing, really. It's hyperventilation. So is it like the kind of thing, it's like a stress to the system, which will make it stronger, like you lift a strong weight? How do you view that in view of all the reduced breathing?
Sure. So when you are over breathing unconsciously, it's very damaging for the body. We know that. Even the levels of chronic hyperventilation, you're exhaling too much CO2, you're overworking your heart. It's bad news, causing vasoconstriction. Everyone knows that. No one's going to argue with that. But it's interesting how ancient methods from China, especially pranayamas, have you do this crazy, really intense breathing. I said, how can these two things be at such odds with one another? It comes down to conscious versus unconscious. So when you take control of your breathing and you willingly put yourself in these states where you're over breathing way too much, it's been shown to be extremely therapeutic. And you can call it Wim Hof method, you can call it Tumo, you can call it Sudarshan Kriya, you can call it Pranayama. They're all doing the same thing, which is why they all have many of the same benefits. So what Wim does, and a lot of people really sort of push back against it because they're confused, this breathing method purposely stresses you out. So people think, I'm stressed all day. Why do I want to be stressed out? That's exactly why you should do it. This is the pressure release valve. You spend about 15 to 20 minutes really going for it, really breathing. This helps balance your nervous system and calms you. So the other 23 and a half hours of the day, you can actually function normally without that stress. So right at University of California, San Francisco, Alyssa Eppel is now studying extreme breathing for people with rheumatoid arthritis, for people with other autoimmune diseases, because if you talk to Wim and all the people who have studied with him, these are people who had been on drugs for decades, who had severe problems. They now have no symptoms of these problems because they were able to balance their nervous systems. It's especially effective for people with autoimmune issues. And the science is very, very clear on that. Wim's great because he's willing to go into the labs. He's willing to do the experiments. And the science is really bolstering so much of what he and the ancients have been saying for so long.
Well, James, when I read your book, there was one thing that kept being mentioned that was intriguing to me. And I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. That Sudarshan Kriya that looked like it was around the Heights somewhere, your experience was Rome, to say the least.
Yeah.
Very curious about that place.
Yeah, so this was years and years ago when I was eating the right food, I was exercising a lot, was having all kinds of problems, respiratory problems. I surf a lot at Ocean Beach, so I was getting pneumonia and bronchitis. Why is this happening? My doctor suggested I take a breathing class. I looked online, found that one and took it, and had after a couple classes, had a very extreme reaction where within a couple of minutes, I was sitting in this cold room in the heat, legs crossed, just breathing like this, and I just started pouring sweat. I mean, a sweat I've never had in my life. Other people were in the class, they saw it. Hair was sopping wet, like I sweat through parts of my jeans. It was bizarre. No one could really explain what had happened. And so I kind of, as a journalist, I don't want to write a memoir, so I filed that experience in the back files for years until I was able to learn about this tumo and these monks who can sit in the snow for 8 hours at a time and melt a circle around them by breathing. And that sounds impossible, right? Of course it does. Until Herbert Benson at Harvard Medical School went out and tested these guys in the 80s and found that in a cold room, they can breathe in ways that he put a wet sheet on them in a cold room. Within about half an hour, the sheet was dry because they had so much heat. So this has been scientifically studied. And so that helped give context of just how powerful breathing can be. One part that research that didn't make it into the book because I just didn't have space for it is I went to UCSF and did that Sudarshan Kriya in a lab as they were doing blood draws the whole time. And the researchers were so completely freaked out afterwards because my pH went up to about 7.69, which is emergency room level, alkalosis. And they had never seen anything like this. And they're like, we're going to stop you. I said, I feel great because this is when you're consciously doing this to yourself. I've been able to work up some flexibility so I can really ramp up my pH. I can bring it up, I can bring it down and have that flexibility to offload CO2, then offload oxygen. And this is exactly what Wim Hof does, and it's just interesting to see that clarified with some measurements of how extreme this pushes your body into these states.
James, I'm so fascinated and thankful. I could be here for the whole day, but I want to thank you so much taking time. I know you're going crazy busy now because you're a popular guy, as you should be. You've done an amazing thing. So I want to thank you so much for being on this. And I'm hoping and I'm sure it will bring a lot of benefits to the viewers.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy that you've felt for yourself some of these benefits before, and what a privilege to have worked with Stow. I'm jealous.
Thank you so much, James. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here.
Have a great day. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
For more helpful videos like this, join my free community at adielgorel.com or click the link below.